All right, good morning and happy Saturday, Central Georgia. Happy holiday weekend. It is July 5th, and we are going to talk a little bit more about the upcoming weekend forecast, which honestly is looking great. Spoiler alert, there's really not a lot to talk about in our specific forecast, not only for the weekend, but also for the upcoming work week. Things are looking relatively good. The main reason that we're going to come on and talk this afternoon is mostly because we do have our third named storm of the 2025 hurricane season that was just updated as of 8 a.m. this morning. So I'm going to kind of tell you the latest on Tropical Storm Chantal. That is the name that it took, and we'll talk a little bit more about what we can expect to see from this system and then just touch base with our 2025 hurricane season. But because we're here, we're going to talk about our weather as well. So we're going to start off like we always do by taking a look at the sky cams across the area. And right now we're taking a look at Warner Robins, which honestly is always one of my favorites just because you can always see the clear blue skies really well. But you can also see that this morning too. Only one lone cloud in the sky there, and otherwise it is just blue skies across the whole picture. So a great start to Saturday. The holiday weekend is really off to a nice start, not only in Warner Robins, but also in Dublin as well. Again, a couple of those high puffy clouds, and that's honestly it. We're not really expecting a lot in the way of rain today, and not a lot in the way of cloud cover either. So it's going to be a great chance to enjoy your holiday weekend. Just keep rolling with the outdoor plans. I know last night actually ended up being a great night as well for 4th of July. We will find the same scene elsewhere as well. Now, you may have been able to see it, and you might be able to see it now. The downtown Macon Skycam shaking around a little bit there. That's kind of the only notable difference that's going to be at play throughout the rest of the day today. So that is a little bit of a wind gust out there. It's going to be a bit breezy today, which is maybe going to help with how things feel outside. And that actually is related to what's going on with Tropical Storm Chantal. We're not talking about major tropical storm force winds or anything like that in our area, but it'll just bring us a nice little breeze throughout the day today that we haven't really had over the past few days. So you can see that in Macon, and they're not the only one who will have a breeze. And I have an exciting update to our Perry Skycam. We actually heard from the wonderful people at the Perry Airport. They told us that the observation station there ended up taking a lightning strike. That's why we lost our observations at the Perry Skycam, but that they are actively working on getting a new part and getting it replaced. So we do have an update on our Perry Skycam. It will be back up and running before too long. So good news on that front. And otherwise, the forecast is just kind of in a little bit of a lull here. Right now, the temperatures are pretty consistent. We're somewhere between the low to mid 80s this morning. I don't believe anybody's really begun to find the upper 80s. Our warmest spot on the map here is Milledgeville at 86 degrees. Everybody else, again, low to mid 80s. So a typical July morning here. And it won't be long before we begin to find the 90s, as we are so accustomed to during this time of year. This also a familiar sight. There's plenty of mugginess on the board. Dark green almost everywhere. Pockets of slightly less humidity. But overall, again, typical summertime thing, there is some humidity out in the air. And of course, that has the feels like numbers up just a touch as well. Upper 80s feeling like in a couple of spots, and we're already feeling like the 90s here in our northeastern counties. Now, I know, I'm not sure if Ben Jones has mentioned this on air, but we're all a little skeptical if maybe Gordon's sensor might be a little bit wonky. Their feels like number is always just through the roof. Maybe you're in Gordon though, and you're thinking, no, it really always does feel super crazy hot. So maybe a little bit actually cooler than it's saying there in Gordon, but potentially it could feel all the way as warm as 93 degrees. I hope not, but it potentially could. So here's a look at your wind gust map. Now remember, I was talking about that gust that we saw in downtown Macon, which funny enough, we've recorded a wind gust up to 21 miles an hour. So that may have even been what we were looking at on the Skycam there. They're not the only ones who've got some gusty winds here. Swainsboro seeing a gust at 20, Cochran at 23, Eastman and Milledgeville both recording a wind gust at 17 miles an hour. So throughout the day today, again, you'll kind of notice a little bit of a breeze here. We haven't had a very steady breeze in a while, so this will be something that will probably play into the forecast here. Otherwise, if you're not getting one of these gustier winds, the winds are somewhere from 5 to 15 miles an hour sustained. This is not something super impactful. I'm not talking about something that's going to blow trees over or anything like that. It's just kind of honestly a nice little summer breeze that may help cool things off and keep the air feeling less stale throughout the day today. So that's one of the headlines that I've thrown on here. Hot and breezy, maybe a little bit of a warm breeze throughout the afternoon. But otherwise, that's kind of the most notable change in the forecast from the past few days to today. Otherwise, the main headline of the story is basically the same thing. Maybe maybe a stray shower or a stray storm, but I actually think the rain chances today are really, really low. Most places are going to stay completely dry through the afternoon, so great for Saturday on the holiday weekend, and there's just a really low-end chance at catching maybe a stray shower or storm. If you do, isolated and short-lived, that same kind of summertime thing that you're used to seeing. The high temperature will also be nice and familiar. We'll stay in the low 90s today, but of course, as you just saw on the feels like map, we'll feel a little bit warmer than that as we kind of factor in the humidity here throughout the day. So let's take a look at where things stand right now on the satellite and radar. And you know what? I just saw, yeah, okay, did you see that? It'll play back one more time, but if you can see this little ring that appears, and there's one down there towards Americus as well, that's actually birds on the radar. I don't think I've actually caught that on our radar before. So that is kind of a flock of birds taking off, and the radar is able to catch it as they fly into there. I'll let you see it one more time. Yeah, pretty cool. We saw some birds early this morning, so that showed up on the radar, but other than the birds, there's actually not much else to note on the satellite and radar. We're quiet and clear. And like I said, throughout the day today, I really think we're going to stay mostly quiet and clear. So what is the big thing that we're going to be talking about today? Well, it's what you can see as we kind of go bigger picture here out towards the coast, the Georgia coast, and honestly the Carolina coasts here. This is Tropical Storm Chantal. Now, it's been upgraded to a tropical storm as of this morning. Remember, the National Hurricane Center has been watching this area of potential development for many, many days now, and they just upgraded it to a tropical depression earlier in the week, and now it is Tropical Storm Chantal. This is our third named system of the 2025 hurricane season, and we're going to kind of continue to monitor this over the next couple of days or so. So again, tropical storm, as we kind of play this out towards it making landfall, it's expected to make landfall along the Carolina coast sometime early tomorrow morning. Now, earlier models were saying closer to 2 a.m. Now maybe a little bit of a later landfall, closer to 8 a.m. Regardless, what I really want you to note here is as we kind of track this out towards landfall, notice how we keep the tropical storm status the entire time. That's actually a good thing. I want to show you that we're not expected to intensify further into a hurricane as this thing makes its way towards landfall. Also, we're kind of on the lower end scale of this thing being a tropical storm. So some intensification is expected. Around landfall, the sustained winds should be around 55 or 50 miles an hour. Right now, the sustained winds are up to about 40 miles an hour. So we'd be jumping that up just a touch. But remember, for tropical storm criteria, it can have sustained winds all the way from 39 to 73 miles an hour. So on that grand spectrum of wind speeds that it could be sustaining, we're somewhere in the middle. We're kind of on the lower end right now, but we'll see this thing jump up to about sustained winds of 50 miles an hour. That just means that there are tropical storm force winds expected along this region where it's expected to make landfall. Now, what region are we really talking about? Well, we can turn to the National Hurricane Center watches and warnings to talk a little bit more about where landfall is expected. First and foremost, I want to show you no tropical storm watches or warnings in our specific central Georgia area, no tropical storm watches and warnings even on the Georgia coast. So this system is really not expected to directly impact our entire state at all. When we're talking about landfall, it is the coastal Carolinas here. You can see tropical storm warnings, which means tropical storm force winds, and then also maybe some dangerous flooding is expected in this entire red area here. Tropical storm force winds and flooding are possible in the yellow area here. Remember, that's what a watch is. The conditions are potentially right, but they're expected where this red area is here. So somewhere between the northern South Carolina coast into the southern North Carolina coast, that's where it's expected to make landfall, but potentially could jog a little bit further south towards the Charleston area here. Regardless, not supposed to impact our region here. This just means they would be seeing again some gusty winds, hurricane or tropical storm force winds up to around 73 miles an hour, and then probably watching for some flooding in that area as well. When we're talking about the Georgia coast, I will say if you are traveling for 4th of July weekend, the thing that you could expect to see down in areas like Savannah or just other regions along the Georgia coast, we'd probably be watching for some dangerous riptide currents. But let's take a look at what the wind speeds are expected to do here. Now, I'm just showing you this one to show you that that is kind of picking up our breeze a little bit here. You can see, and I'll step out of the way this direction, the circulation that this system is taking. So doing that counterclockwise motion, it's bringing a lot of flow into our area, which is increasing our winds, just giving us a little bit of a breeze. That's why I say we're being influenced by Chantal this afternoon with a little bit of the breeze, but otherwise None of those tropical storm force winds are expected to be in our area. As this tracks closer to Myrtle Beach, to Charleston, you can see those numbers go up a little bit higher, closer to tropical storm force winds, again in the same areas that they have warned and even in the areas that they have watches for. So that's just kind of a look at what the winds could look like in that area, and to show you not really a lot going on in our area in terms of this storm. Just to take a look at the spaghetti models, again, I've already shown you the watches and warnings, so there's a pretty good idea of where this thing is going to land. But even if we look at the spaghetti models here on the GFS, the consensus is that this is kind of going to continue a northwesterly track. After it makes landfall, it's going to take a little bit of a jog to the northeast and then continue pushing northeast once it makes landfall. Again, not expected to intensify to a hurricane. We're probably talking about a tropical storm throughout this whole thing, and then likely detensifying into a post-tropical storm somewhere over in North Carolina. So let's play it out on the graph model here. Most of what I'm telling you with this system is just encouragement that we're not really expecting to see much from it in our region, and you can really see that in the graph. Now remember, sometimes when we have these systems, we even just get subsequent moisture from them slinging into our area. We can have increased rain chances. With this, we're on the west side of that system, so we're really not expecting to see anything like that either. Remember, the east side, that's what we call the dirty side. That's where you can get a little bit of mess just coming from the whole system itself, but we are on the clean side. So even if you're down towards the coast, there may be a little bit of increased moisture there, maybe a few more showers and storms, but here in central Georgia, really not expecting to see impacts from this thing at all. So we'll play it out. Again, landfall somewhere on the Carolina coasts here, and then it will just continue to jog a little bit towards the northwest before taking a bit of a turn towards the northeast and detensifying into a post-tropical storm, again, somewhere in North Carolina. So really honestly encouraging, not only for us, but also for in the coastal Carolinas, because this could have been a little bit worse than it's really anticipated to be. We're just really talking about a tropical storm here over the next couple of hours or so. So in our specific area, if we kind of take the future view back to our region, remember earlier I was talking a little bit about our chance for maybe a stray shower or a storm throughout the afternoon and evening, but the future view is almost clear until we get to 9 a.m. tomorrow, and still seeing the same type of thing. This is going to be a great weekend. I could not imagine a better forecast for the 4th of July weekend. Clear skies through the morning into the afternoon. The only thing that changes is just the slight chance for maybe a brief isolated shower or storm, and anything that we do see won't last very long at all. Heading into the work week, excuse me, not much changes. The rain chance may go up just a touch. There may be a slightly better chance at catching one of those stray showers or storms, but overall, the chance is not looking too great at all. Again, it will really just be an isolated rain chance for the early part of the work week. That will be the same story for Tuesday. So in terms of rain chances, I want you to think the same kind of thing today, tomorrow, Monday, and Tuesday. Heading into Wednesday, that's when things get a little bit messier. So what's happening is right now we're kind of in a weak upper level ridge, one of those weak high pressure systems that's holding our weather pretty consistent over the last few days and over the next few days as well. Heading into the second half of the work week, so Wednesday, that ridge is going to start to break apart, and it would just allow for a little more activity to creep into our area. You know the drill. When you're looking at all of these paint blobs on the long range models, this is not exactly what we're expecting to see, or in terms of how things are looking or how widespread we're expecting things to look. This is really just a guess from models that are lower resolution, which is why it looks so widespread. It really just means as we head into Wednesday, Thursday, likely Friday as well, the rain chances are just going to be up a touch. On the 7-day, I've gone from 20 up to 30 just to say there may be a little bit more coverage in some of these showers and storms, but overall it's not going to be a total washout or widespread rainmaker at all. So that's kind of a look at the weather again in our area. Not a ton to talk about, but if we're touching base for where we should be for hurricane season this year. Now remember, Chantal took the third name on the list, so this is our third named system of the 2025 season. The next name on the list would be Dexter. That would be the D on the list, and then the rest of them, again, we'll kind of see how things play out throughout the rest of hurricane season. In terms of where we should be, this is a look at where we normally stand in terms of average. We typically see 14 tropical storms during hurricane season, 7 hurricanes, 3 major hurricanes. Colorado State forecast said that we were going to see 17 tropical storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 major hurricanes. NOAA kind of puts us somewhere in between the average and the forecast from Colorado State here. So in terms of where we fall right now, kind of on forecast. Again, we're really in the early part of the season. Seasonality for hurricanes and for tropical storms in the Atlantic really doesn't kick off until we talk about months like September and October. We tend to see our first named storm in this area right around June 20th. That tends to be the average date that the first named storm appears. That was pretty close to when we saw it this year. But again, generally, you can just see the months of June and July usually are off to a pretty slow start. August and then truly September is where we start to see more named system until things finally wind down around November. Who's counting? I know I'm going to be paying attention to when we get closer to November. So we won't really see a whole uptick in activity until we get a little bit closer to months like August and September. So just in terms of where we fall right now, kind of right where we should be for this time of year during hurricane season, during kind of a slightly above average expected hurricane season here. But remember, the good news is we're not expected to see any direct impacts from Chantal. So we'll be keeping our eye on it. Of course, we'll be, of course, we'll be paying attention to the whole system for our friends over in the Carolinas, but generally, it's not expected to have a direct impact on us, and you can see that from the 7-day as well. The rain chances over the next few days are really just going to stay isolated and scattered. Through the weekend and into the early work week, we're talking rain chances that are about 20%, honestly mostly dry for most spots. And then heading into the second half of the work week, that's when we're going to uptick the rain chance just a bit, around 30%, just to say there may be a slightly better chance at catching one of those isolated showers or storms. Honestly, one of the bigger stories through the upcoming week is going to be the temperatures. Right now, we are seeing the low 80s or low 90s, and it will stay in the low 90s Saturday into Sunday. Heading into Monday and kind of next week, the temperatures are going to start to turn back up to what we would expect for July. Upper 90s. And of course, with the humidity that we have in the area, we'll be expecting heat indices to be in the triple digits. So for Monday, Tuesday, maybe into Wednesday as well, we'll be kind of watching from the National Weather Service for guidance as to whether we need to be in heat advisory criteria. If we stay closer to 97, I'm thinking we probably won't need to be in that criteria. But if the models start trending a little bit closer to 98, 99, then we may have to end up talking about that heat advisory criteria. The good news with the increased rain chances in the second half of the week is that it's going to keep the temperatures slightly at bay. So we'll start to kind of tick back down towards the low 90s as we have a little bit of increased rain chances in our area. So a little bit of ebb and flow, but overall, normal summertime thing on the 7-day forecast here. No direct impacts from Chantal, and in terms of rain chances, scattered, isolated showers, maybe a couple of thunderstorms embedded within there, and then the heat will kind of do this thing that we have on the 7-day here. We'll climb towards the upper 90s in the early work week, and then slightly better rain chances will drive us back down into the low 90s. And other than that, there is not a ton of note on the 7-day forecast, which is a good thing. And of course, we'll keep our eyes on the latest one, Chantal. We were kind of watching the Georgia coast to make sure it wasn't one of the areas that ended up being in the cone or even in some of these watches and warnings. But right now, where things stand, our entire state should not see direct impacts from Chantal, aside from maybe a few increased rain chances down towards the Georgia coast and maybe some increased riptide currents down towards the Georgia coast. So if you're traveling down there, that may have a little bit of an impact on your travel plans. But other than that, at least in our central Georgia region, we should be spared of the impacts of Chantal. So we'll keep you updated with the latest on that. There will be updates every time the National Hurricane Center does issue one, so be on the lookout for those. And then, of course, David Guerrero will be back tonight. He will be doing a live stream later this evening at 5 p.m., same kind of style that I'm doing here. So if you'd like an update with the latest on Chantal as we get closer to landfall, it's expected to make landfall tomorrow morning, so David will kind of have the latest as we take a look at this thing later this evening. Of course, we'll do the regular shows at 6 and 11, and then once again, I'll be back here in the morning at 10 a.m. for an update. Hopefully, if the way things are trending right now, that will be after Chantal has made landfall, so we can kind of touch base with what the impacts are in the coastal Carolinas, where exactly this thing has landed, and how it's going to be heading next. And hopefully that's what we can take a look at as we head into tomorrow morning. Again, 10 a.m., not 11. Our show ends at different times on Saturdays and Sundays, so we'll be doing a 10 a.m. live stream tomorrow morning and a 5 p.m. live stream with David Guerrero later this evening. So thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful weekend here for the holiday weekend, 4th of July. It's a great chance to get outside and enjoy your plans. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow morning.